Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino series. On this episode, we talk to Ivan Bodley, or Funkboy, a veteran bassist and author. And he is just that, a veteran player and music director for the Stars. Originally from Chattanooga, Tennessee, he has resided and worked in places like New Orleans, Los Angeles, London, Boston, and he is now based in New York City. His latest book is Am I Famous Yet? And it looks into his illustrious career in music, where he has traveled to 29 plus countries around the globe and played to audiences of up to 82,000 people in performance settings ranging from jazz duos to 150-member symphony orchestras. Enjoy this interview.
Well, hey, man, it's great to catch up with you. Thanks for taking a minute out today. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much.
So how did a kid from Chattanooga, Tennessee, blossom into this musician that's in a Hall of Fame and has been around so many esteemed cats and had such an interesting life in music?
If I knew, I'd tell you. I don't know. You know, it was a very long, logical sort of progression, kind of one foot in front of the other. You know, I had intention to try to do this, you know, as a younger person, but you never know if you're going to be able to pull it off. You know, the odds against it, sort of like paying your rent, playing music full time, are kind of, you know, not in our favor. One foot in front of the other, and, you know, you work hard and you know, got myself trained, and then on top of that, had to have some good luck as well, you know, because it's not just enough to sort of, you know, be good at what you do, or competent at what you do, I should say. You know, then you still have to have some good luck on your side. And in retrospect, looks like it worked out. You know, I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, so it's been great.
Obviously, for the entertainment world, especially musicians, has been really trying for the last 2 years. How did you survive COVID? What kind of shock to your system was this?
Oh, the hardest part was just sitting home for 15 months doing nothing. You know, just like there was no place to play, there were no venues. I have a very occasional sort of outdoor restaurant gig, you know, very occasional. So I was trying to sort of channel my creativity into other avenues. So I did a lot of remixing of some old recordings that I'd done, and I did some new recordings. You know, all of my musician friends were in the same boat. So suddenly, like, you know, there are people that you could get to play in your projects virtually that you never would have been able to approach otherwise, because they're all busy and working and whatnot. So everybody was sitting home at the same time. So I managed to do a whole group of new recordings. You know, we're file sharing over the internet these days. So I was getting like horns and percussion and strings and all these people like chiming in. They're like thrilled to be able to do something, you know, and I had a couple of pennies saved up, a couple of nuts saved up for the winter. So I was able to keep the lights on and get about $5 worth of unemployment money, and worked. somehow we made it through, you know.
You know, the thing that's interesting about your background is that you've been around so many people. I mean, you go through your list, and it's like Elvis Costello and Sting and Bo Diddley. You go through all of this, and I think there's a perception that fans and music lovers have about legends and luminaries. What did you learn about them kinds of people that you've been around for years and years?
Well, I mean, I guess the biggest thing that I learned is sort of people are people, you know, like everybody, there's all kind of different personalities, and there's different kind of ways of dealing with people. You know, people that happen to be notable or famous are still mostly just people. It's kind of difficult to come at somebody, you know, somebody that you're personally a huge fan of, like Mr. Sting. I got to work with him 3 or 4 times, you know. So I grew up listening to his music and trying to play his music, you know, in high school. The first talent show I ever played, you know, we played Message in a Bottle and Roxanne. You know, so to get to play with him later, it's very hard to come at him not as like a fanboy. But, you know, he's just a dude, and he's having a day, and, you know, hopefully he had something nice for lunch, and hopefully the airport wasn't too crazy like it is for all of us all the time, you know. So you just learn to sort of kind of, you know, try to get past the fan stuff as quick as possible and just kind of deal with them as people. You know, being sort of a sycophant around them, they're not really interested in that. That's not comfortable or fun for most of them. So, you know, you can certainly acknowledge it and say, listen, I really enjoy your work. I have for years, and thank you for the music. And then you're on to whatever the business at hand is. And it's sort of, as you just act like a person around them, then, you know, everything's cool.
You graduate magna cum laude from the Berklee College of Music. You've gone on to 29 plus countries that you've been on stages. My question to you is, if you go back to the beginning of your career, what stage did you hop on where you ultimately felt comfortable and you were like, I'm here, I've somewhat arrived, I feel good in my skin?
That's sort of interesting. Feel good in the skin. I don't know. That's a constant sort of struggle. I do feel comfortable doing it now after years and years, and I've kind of was always on stages, like in theater productions sort of as a youngster. So I didn't start playing music till quite late, actually, like a senior in high school kind of thing. All along the way, and it keeps happening, because a lot of gigs you do are just kind of working for a living. You're playing weddings, funerals, and bar mitzvahs, punching the clock kind of thing. Like there's a whole litany of things that you do that feel like work, that you're preparing, writing charts, learning material, traveling, all that stuff. But then occasionally you get on a big stage or something that feels musically really interesting or fun, and you have all this, simpatico relationship with your fellow musicians, and then suddenly you feel like, yeah, this is kind of what it's all about. I mean, anytime I get onto a big concert stage and everything's firing on all cylinders, that feels like, yeah, this is what it was all about. But then last night I played a great blues club in Manhattan with some really talented players for, an audience of 30, 40 people, whatever it was, and just a great night. You can find it kind of anywhere, really.
What was the first live show that you ever saw that blew your doors down, that made you think, wow, I'd love to do that someday?
There are a couple, and I can kind of cite them. I've sort of tracked them. One was seeing there's a southern rock, funk rock band called Mother's Finest that had a lot of sort of national minor charting records but much more regional success. I think they were much more known in the Southeast where I grew up. And I saw them open for the Atlanta Rhythm section. It was sort of this fusion of like Smokey Robinson and the Miracles and Led Zeppelin, like all mashed together, like quite literally actually. And it just kind of turned my head all the way around. It's like, I don't know what that is, but I want to do that. That's amazing, And then also I remember seeing televised. I remember seeing like Rick James on the Midnight Special, if you remember that TV show from years and years ago. Yeah. Before MTV and all those days, you didn't really have as much chance to sort of see people play it on television. And he did the song You and I was like, it was just this deep, deep groove. It was this 4-note ostinato bass line that I was able to pick out by ear on a buddy of mine had a bass with 2 strings on it. And I sat down and I was able to pick out this line by ear. And it immediately felt right in my hands, like this feels like something that I want to try to figure out how to pursue. Because it just seemed really interesting to me.
So you got a BA in psychology from Tulane University, and I'm curious, was it always going to be music for you, or did you have other dreams and aspirations for your life?
No, because like I said, I didn't pick up bass until I was a senior in high school. So when I was, going off to college, I was in no position to sort of say, I'm going to be a musician. I had no idea, like I wasn't trained. There was no music program in my high school, so I had to take lessons on my own to sort of figure it out. So I went to school. Yeah, I initially started as a biomedical engineering major at Tulane, and I did that for 2 years, and I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be designing knee joints and hip joints the rest of my life, So I transferred over to the psychology department to get my undergrad degree, but what I was really majoring in at Tulane was college radio. I was the music director of our campus station, and that really got me into the business aspect of it, including, record promotion and concert promotion and all this kind of stuff. And when I graduated from Tulane, I went into the music business. I was a publicist for Epic Records for 3 years, thinking that was sort of like what I wanted to do, was be involved in the creative arts and deal with all the rock stars and all this kind of stuff. And then 3 years into that, I'm realizing, the music business has very little to do with music. It's all marketing. You could be selling soap, really. Like it's that kind of skill set for that company, which is fine. The world needs that. But my creative pursuits, I decided to try to see if I could go actually figure out how to play at that point. Quit my corporate job, handed in my corporate Amex card, and moved to London because I had a place to stay over there. I just played music for like a year and a half, and then realized that what I needed to do, if I was really going to try to make a career out of it, was get trained. So that's when I went back to music school, Berklee College of Music. So I was probably 26, before I even went to music school, so that's kind of late in life. It was a very circuitous career path.
So how many people told you you have to write a book before you release Am I Famous Yet?
That's a constant refrain I was hearing, because we have so many crazy road stories, things that happen, bizarre things that were untoward. And for me, what would happen was, if something goofy would happen on a gig backstage, the caterer wouldn't give us forks or something. I mean, that really literally happened last summer. It's like, we don't have any forks. Here's your food. I'm like, you have to scrape it off the plate. And that just seems such a weird thing. But it would just remind me of something else crazier that had happened, somewhere else on another gig somewhere else in the world. And I would start telling these stories backstage, like, oh, this wasn't even as bad as the time that blah, blah happened. And then people were exactly as you're saying, like, oh, man, you got to write stuff down. It's like, there's too many good stories over the years. That was the other thing during the pandemic. It kind of helped me, give me the time to really finish the book. It was mostly written before that, but like really finished, get it edited, get it, pressed and shipped and the whole thing. So that was another sort of pandemic strange blessing that I was able to get the book out.
If you have a dream tonight and you run into a younger version of yourself, around the time you started playing gigs, and you could give yourself one piece of advice based on the wisdom you've accumulated throughout all of these years of gigs and touring and living, what would you say to your younger version?
Man, that is such an interesting question. In one way, I've been very deliberate about what I've tried to accomplish. And like I said, the whole career has kind of been one foot in front of the other. So I think what I might say is, like, you're on the right path. What you're doing is right, and the method that you're using is right. But just sort of have confidence and faith in your natural instinct to follow that dream, that drive, because it we know now it worked out. At the time, you have no idea.
Yeah, for sure. You played on a lot of stages with a lot of people, and I'm curious, if we get off the phone, the DeLorean pulls up in front of your house, you punch in the digits, you can go in the history of music and see anyone anywhere. Where are you going?
I've never seen Stevie Wonder play live. And he's just one of those guys where I just would love to see him. I might want to go see one of his 70s concerts, when he was sort of like Intervision, Talking Book, that era, when he was just on fire, everything that he was composing and creating. So, yeah, I'll say Stevie Wonder concert 1973. That's my DeLorean.
Man, I would love to do that myself, for sure. So, as a musician, and, you've already talked about seeing crowds live, what are the crowds like now that COVID's kind of slowing down? And what do you hope we all retain about the power of live music now that we're getting back to it?
Well, I've noticed, even I started getting busy kind of last summer, like almost a year ago. And then, we've had some waves of things, the Omicron, all that kind of stuff kind of set us back a little bit. But what I noticed immediately was that people were hungry to be in public. They were hungry to see live music. They were hungry to be entertained. They were just joyful to be able to see stuff that they'd kind of taken for granted and experience stuff that they'd taken for granted for all those years. So I feel like that's kind of continuing. Like, people are really, they're happy to see you. Like they want to be entertained. They want to have fun. They enjoy what you're doing. They usually show up, if it's a concert situation, they've showed up on purpose to see what you're doing. I kind of hope that trend continues, because it's been a really nice thing.
So everyone has a perception of you, your family, your friends, your fans, those that have read your book, but ultimately you control your life. You live your life. Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are?
Who do you think you are?
I ask that question all the time. I don't know. I am kind of the subtitle of the book, Memoir of a Working Class Rock Star. That's who I am. I work for a living. I lift my own amps. I drive my own car. I do rock starry kind of stuff sometimes. I get to play with some famous people sometimes, but I very much work for a living, and I feel good about it. I like what I do. That time on stage just kind of makes all the rest of it worthwhile. All the schlepping and the lifting and the and the practice time and the time spent in traffic, that's, sometimes we joke around, like we say, we do the gig for free. What we get paid for is the travel. because, everybody's got travel nightmare stories in their past. And if you're a musician, you're traveling all the time, you just have more of them, like flight delays and traffic and all this kind of stuff. So I'm a working class rock star. That's who I am.
I love it, man. So let's get to the good business here so that everybody understands where they can pick up your book, where they can find out about live gigs, any music you have out there. Where can they go? Where's the best place?
Everything is available at funkboy.net, funkboy.net. Links to everything you just mentioned and more.
Ivan, man, it's been great to catch up with you. I am always just absolutely thrilled that cats like you exist out there, and I get a minute to get to know you, present you to the audience out there at large. So thank you. Keep up the great work, man. It was great to get to know you.
I really appreciate you reaching out and taking the time to talk to me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, and music around the world. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino on the iTunes Store. Visit the YouTube Neon Jazz channel, and for everything related to Joe Dimino, go to joedimino.com. And when you're there, you can donate to the cause via PayPal or Patreon. Until next time.